Yeah, I'm
Okay.
gonna turn my sound up just a hair. Dylan's hopefully gonna be going to sleep, so
Yeah. Man, I've noticed sometimes you'll be messaging me at like 6 a.m., 7 a.m. my time. And I'm like, holy crap, this dude's 3 hours ahead or, ahead of me. What time do you wake up?
I'm up at 2:40 every morning.
Oh my God. What time do you go to
Yeah.
bed?
Uh, Depending on littles, I'm hopefully in bed by 9 at night.
Wow. Jeez.
Yeah.
I was talking to my wife this morning as I was leaving, and I was like, I got to remember to ask him what time he gets up because like even when it's early as hell here by my standards, this dude's already awake and he's on the Pacific coast. So that's that farmer life, huh, man?
Yeah, it is. It's
Wow.
it's a good life. Although it's frustrating when I have to wait for my East Coast friends to wake up.
Sorry, man. I guess even if I get up at 2, um, yeah, you're just always going to be. Wait, no, 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 no. If I get up at 2,
No, if
that I'll be up
you were up
before
at
you.
5,
Yeah,
then you'd keep me up.
yeah. There we go. Okay, cool. Numbers are hard. All right, so let me do a quick intro, real quick. What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the podcast. I have a guest with me today, Derrick Josi. Did I pronounce the last name right?
Yeah, you nailed it.
Sweet, sweet. I meant to look up the pronunciation of it and then I forgot. So I was like, screw it, we'll just wing it. So Derrick is the author of a new book on the dairy industry, and I had the great privilege of getting an advance copy and checking it out, and it is now available to order on Amazon and I guess is that the primary place for folks to get it?
Amazon and Kindle, yeah, it's
Okay,
the only places. Amazon makes it so easy
yeah,
to basically self-publish that it's just nice.
right on. The book is called An Industry Worth Defending.
No,
And
we changed the title at the
oh
very
crap,
and it's
sorry.
industry worth fighting for.
Fighting for. That's right. That's right. Defending was the advanced copy that I
Yep.
got, and then it got changed. So sorry about that. An industry worth fighting for. And man, I mean, it's a great glimpse at the industry in general for those who aren't familiar with it, but also, talks about, you know, I don't want to ruin it for anybody, but it opened up my eyes to a lot of things. And we can kind of talk about some of that stuff today, but in general, I just wanted to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself and talk about the book some. So I guess first off, who the heck are you? And we'll go from there.
That's a logical place to start.
Yeah.
Um, well, I'm a dairy farmer, obviously. That's why I'm fighting for my industry. But I am the fourth generation on the family farm, all the way on the Pacific coast in Tillamook, Oregon. You may have seen our products in stores. I'm part of the Tillamook Co-op. Best dairy products you can get. I'm not biased at all. Our ice cream is phenomenal. Why I keep it out of the house. Otherwise, I can way up in weight. But yeah, fourth generation. My kids hopefully will be fifth generation. We are in the process of building all new state of the art facilities. It's a busy time of my life. And I published a book. Um, and I run a side business advocating for agriculture online. So I'm not busy at all.
Yeah, I was about to say, man, I don't know how you found the time to write the book. It's impressive. Yeah, when you mentioned Tillamook, I told my business partner that we were recording today, and the first thing he said was, "Oh my God, dude, that's the best ice cream ever." So
Yeah.
he's a neutral critic, and he's absolutely a huge fan. So, um, one thing that you mentioned is that you're, a long line of dairy farmers. And honestly, before we linked up on Instagram, I guess is where we met. I don't even remember how we
Mhm.
actually, I guess we just ended up following one
I think
another.
it was one of your signs being held up that
Okay.
followed me to find you and start following you. And then
Nice.
you were surprised because you come all, your pictures and stuff, you're like, oh, weightlifting,
Right.
granddad guy. And lo and behold, you are really smart, follow the science better than I can on most things. And it's just like a breath of fresh air.
Oh, thanks, man. Yeah, I try to fool people a little bit, catch them off guard. They think they're in for an easy battle, and then they're like, "Oh my God!" Kind of like
And boom.
Sanjay Gupta on Joe Rogan recently. He wasn't ready for Joe to hit him
Yeah,
with
I
all
actually
that.
think that was a great interview.
I do too. And it's a shame that people say like, oh, Sanjay was owned and all this stuff and they clip it up because
Hmm.
it really was a good discourse over however many hours.
Yeah,
But Joe
3 hours
did,
long.
yeah, yeah. I mean, Joe did really like hold his feet to the fire on that one topic, which
Mhm.
was great to see.
It needed to be done, but
Yeah,
overall, that was like I said, I it was one of my favorite interviews with him recently.
he's had some good ones
And
recently, man. He's
yeah, he
been
does.
nailing it.
But anyway, back to us.
What's that?
We don't need to promote Joe Rogan.
Yeah, true.
He,
I mean, his numbers are going to skyrocket now from this.
yeah,
So
because of us. Yeah.
yeah. So no, yeah. So we linked up on Instagram. Obviously, we have a lot of similar stances on the issues, and we've
Mhm.
obviously talked a bunch back and forth since then. And I was shocked, really, being a South Carolina guy. North Carolina, South Carolina is where I spent most of my life. And obviously around a lot of farming communities. I didn't know much about farming out on the West Coast. And it was interesting to hear kind of the lineage of dairy farmers that you come from, back from when
Mhm.
your, however many greats grandfather was an indentured servant, et cetera.
Yeah, my great grandfather
Great.
came over
Okay.
in the early 1900s, started leasing the place in 1917 after he paid off his what he owed to the person that funded his trip over to
Wow.
the United States. Yeah, I mean, it's a unique story, but done all right.
What is it like being you in Oregon? I mean, Oregon, when I think Oregon, obviously I think what I see on the news about Oregon.
You know, Oregon, I love the states. I, you have beautiful mountains, beautiful coastlines. You have high desert on the east side,
Mhm.
and most of Oregon is not insane. And what you see on the news, it's a very small minority. I mean, question some of the stuff our government does. And we have a ballot initiative coming up where they're going to basically outlaw animal agriculture if it gets voted through, and hunting. You know, it'll make artificial insemination will be a felony sexual offense. It would make it so that if I have my kids around me while I'm working on the farm, it's endangering a minor and exposing them to sexually explicit content or some craziness like that. But that's the that's that fringe element you see on the news trying to
Yeah.
push that kind of thing.
Yeah. And that's really interesting because at the same time, the same groups, the same types of people, they basically want a toddler or just beyond a toddler to be able to make a decision about changing their sex or putting
Yeah,
material about sex in curricula for young students, yet you can't have a child around to show the art of dairy farming. It's
yeah.
preposterous.
Just to pass down knowledge that otherwise gets lost. I mean, for example, large animal veterinarians,
Mhm.
trying to find large animal veterinarians, it's getting harder and harder because there's less people going into the practice. So we're, you know, we're lucky where we're at because we're a strong dairy communities. We have several in the area, but even then, you need a veterinarian. It can be a 4 or 5 hour wait before they can get
Wow.
to your farm. So,
Yeah.
you have a lot of stuff that you learn how to do on your own when that happens.
Yeah, I bet, man. I went to an agricultural university for my undergrad, and some of the research I was doing in the lab where I worked was at the veterinary college, and we had a fistulated cow. I'm sure
Mm-hmm.
you know what that is, where you can reach in into the
Oh yeah,
rumen and pull out this. It was incredible.
yeah. They're an incredible animal. I mean, nobody loves cows more than people that work with them because they take this food that we can't digest and turn it into meat and dairy. I mean, how awesome is a cow
Yeah,
to be able to do that?
yeah. What you again? I don't want to give away too much from the book, obviously, but one of the cool parts is where you talk about a day in the life of a cow and
Mm-hmm.
some of those preconceived, notions that folks might
Yeah,
have, dispelling some of that and stuff. So again, just a
I
really
get
cool look at all that.
those pictures on the internet where you see them in a parlor and they're like, "Oh, this cow's hooked up to this machine 24 hours a day," and you look at the picture and they're in a parlor, and because I'm a dairy farmer, I'm like, if that's true, how come there's no feed in front of her? There's no water in front of her. She's in that stall for 10 minutes at a time, and then she's off doing her thing the rest of the day.
Right.
It's ironic. I mean, there's farms that have robots that milk the cows now. The cows go walk to the robot, they milk the cow, and then the cow wanders off. It's not a it's a pretty plush life.
Yeah. I mean, you put in your 10 minutes of work and then you're just living, right? Chewing on your cud
Yeah.
and hanging out.
And they all have a balanced nutrition from nutritionists that specialize in dairy cattle. They eat better, healthier than I do. That's for sure.
Probably me too. Man, so in terms of like what you're up against, I mean, I know that you get all kinds of crazy messages and stuff. I've seen them. You've shared some on your story. There's some in the book. I mean, there's people who are like crazy activists that are coming at you all the time. What is that like?
At this point, I'm just so used to it. It's water off a duck's back. But I mean, there's been times like when Casey, my wife, was pregnant with Reagan, our firstborn. She got private messages where they were asking when we were going to send Reagan to the slaughter plant at yada yada, and just the most vicious, horrible things. And Casey's not a dairy farmer; she just happens to be married to one. So
right,
you're so angry at who I am that you're willing to lash out at somebody else. I just hope those people get the help, they seek the help they really need. But yeah, it can be vicious. Luckily, I've built a community around what I do online that it seems like they shy away from even bothering me anymore, because before I even notice it, usually they've got dogpiled by followers and people that enjoy what I put out there. So it's gotten easier, knock on wood. But yeah, there's just crazies online. I mean, we all see it. What are you going to do? Right. They hide behind their screen. Most of them have private accounts, and they set up multiple ones. So,
man, I just got to the point, like, I really, every once in a while I'll slide, but for the most part, I just don't engage in back and forth in comments anymore. I used to, but now, if it's someone that I really want to, further that conversation with, I'll say like, hey, why don't you shoot me a message and you can come on the podcast. We'll debate this topic. 99.9% of the time, they never respond, or they say no, or they're not interested in a true open discourse about topics.
And they, social media is such a horrible way to try and communicate, as though they must have a lot more time than I do, because they will write novels, and expect you to point by point talk about everything, which is why I kind of wrote the book, because right there in the book is every single thing that they try and demonize me for, spelled out, and why we do what we do.
Right.
It's an easy way for me to go, sure, you want to know my ideas on that? It's for free on the Kindle Unlimited app. You can get it. If you're subscribed to the Unlimited, you can get it for free and read it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're going to have to pay to read my thoughts.
Right. And the sad part of that is most of those people, I'm not going to say all, but most of them, they're not interested in actually knowing your thoughts on these things. They just want to cast aspersions and feel like they got their point for the day.
And I don't want to, generalize them, but most of them have never been on a farm.
Right.
Or most likely never even actually been out to the country. And yet they seem to think that somebody who has lived on the land, and his family has lived on the same piece of property for over 100 years, is going to destroy the environment. My kids swim in the same river I swam in when I was a kid. My grandkids my dad fishes the river. I mean, I think he's down there right now. The last thing we want to do is destroy what we've all loved forever. It doesn't even make sense.
Right. Yeah, and the same thing with hunters and fishermen. They're most folks who cast aspersions at people like that, because I'm an avid, outdoorsman, I guess you could say. I grew up hunting and fishing my whole life. nobody in my family was farmers, but my grandfather was an operator at a grain bin and retired from that position. So I hung out with farmers, all that was
Mhm.
every day before and after school, for like the last several years of school. And then, I was just always around it. And folks like that, they do have a better appreciation of the land, of the wildlife, of preserving that thing, which is what they essentially live from and for, right? I mean,
Mhm.
most folks who are casting these aspersions live in cities, and maybe they've been on a hike on a trail, but that's about it, right?
Right. They enjoy their weekend trail hike, and they think that somehow the loggers that are up there in the mountains every day are the ones that are going to ruin the trail that is paid for by the logging industry.
Yep.
It's
Yeah.
there's a
Yeah.
disconnect, and I try and bridge that, and I mean I put out a lot of videos, especially over on Facebook. It's daily that I'm putting stuff out, just talking about my life. And the book is an extension of that. It gets people the chance to do a deeper dive, and that way they don't have to search through thousands of videos to find all the topics that I have uh, explained and debunked the topics the activists have tried to push out there. And then there's a whole other side, like CNN just ran an article about milk from fungi that's growing in stainless steel lab tanks that it's as good as milk. It's genetically the same, and so they can make cheese and all this. And I'm just like, okay, that's great. And if you want that, that's fine. I don't have a problem if you want to drink that type of milk. More than I care that you drink almond milk or soy milk or any of that. You do you, but let's look at the actual environmental footprint of that, not just the energy used, but what are you having to put into those tanks to grow the fungi to produce it? Where's the waste product going? I mean, these are the things they never talk about. It's
Right.
always, oh, it's so much more environmentally friendly because cows produce methane. Well, methane has a 12-year cycle in the atmosphere. It's a closed loop circuit with the cows. The cows eat the food that you're providing. They shoot the methane through their burps, not the farts, their burps. And it's up there for 12 years, breaks down, comes back, plants reabsorb the broke down carbon, it grows again, the cow eats it again. It's cows aren't producing excess methane. It's a system where the extra methane is actually coming from the oil and gas industry.
Mm-hmm.
And ironically, compost and swamps, and it's just the Amazon rainforest produces more methane than anywhere else in the world, I believe I just read, which is hilarious, So do we tear down the Amazon rainforest to stop the methane produced through there?
Right.
No.
Right.
All this is just, I feel like they're putting the cart before the horse, trying to do stuff without actually analyzing the long-term ramifications.
Yeah. And that's a good point about the carbon cycle, that they never talk about that piece of it, at least with most of the folks I've interacted with. So, when I was in grad school, a lot of my research was actually funded by the National Science Foundation. And I was able to get that funding because they were doing a big push towards climate change research. I wasn't doing climate change research, but I was looking at adaptation in animals that could apply to that. So like, how do they deal with rising temperatures? How do they deal with pH? All these different things. And so I was funded for that. But, most of those conversations really just stopped at, atmospheric CO2. So you talk about the Amazon being one of the greatest generators of methane, but it's also one of the greatest scrubbers of CO2 from the environment, right? And CO2 is the most oxidized form. Methane is CH3, and then CO2 is just that carbon oxidized at that point. And that's the part they don't talk about, is like, same deal. Like you said, the methane is oxidized to CO2. The plants absorb it. The cows eat the plants. It's a cycle. And I think I think this is like something you see in a lot of areas, is people mean well. they truly do mean well. They think I mean, they are nice, quote unquote, for the most part, but they're just not well enough read, well enough educated. They're acting off of emotion instead of being pragmatic, right?
Yeah. And they want a solution that is easy, and none of the solutions are easy. I mean, farms are doing amazing. Dairies are doing amazing things. We have digesters that catch the methane, and we produce natural gas. We produce energy, and all that takes time because you have to start with the larger farms because they have more of it, which means it's economies of scale. But as things scale, it becomes a cheaper technology, more easily available. So then smaller farms are able to do that. I mean, it's just they want it fixed now. That's our society in a nutshell. No,
Yeah.
no, we have to fix it now. And then you have things like let's ban plastic straws to save the turtle. So then okay, now we have wooden straws or paper straws wrapped in plastic.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one of my favorite lines from a Tom McDonald song. He's like,
yep, it is.
We went from plastic straws wrapped in paper to paper straws wrapped in plastic. But it's so true, man.
It is. And you have to sit back and think, okay, this is all going to come out in the wash. We'll get it figured out. Let's stop making knee-jerk reactions just to feel better about what we're doing in the environment. Because honestly, agriculture takes more carbon out of the air than it produces. I mean, you can't grow as much food as we do in this country and not do that. At the peak of growing season in the United States, it's actually producing more oxygen than the Amazon rainforest. So, I mean,
wow.
Agriculture, while it has its faults, we're doing what we can, and we're going to continue to get better.
Yeah.
If we're allowed to.
Right. A lot of, being kind of immersed in that community when I was in grad school, a lot of these people kind of buy into like the Malthusian argument of overpopulation, and they think that, we're just spiraling out of control, everything's unsustainable, the world's going to end, which of course every decade that's sort of the message. And then every decade you're just like, oh wait, we didn't all die, it's not all over. What do you think?
And we're not all starving.
What's that?
And we're not starving either, obviously.
Right. Yeah, clearly. If anything, the opposite as a population in this country, which has been hopefully a rude awakening for the population in general with the C word wreaking havoc over the past year and a half.
That. We don't want to get doomed.
What are like the big issues facing the dairy industry today? I mean, we've kind of talked about some of it, the lab grown products, I guess, activists, et cetera. But like, as a dairy farmer, what are the big problems you wake up every day and deal with? And what can people in general who are interested in, I don't know, learning more about them besides buying your book, which everybody should go do? Like, what can people do, right? Because I love my ice cream, I love my cheese, I love my shit. I drink whole milk, to be honest. As a fitness coach, maybe I shouldn't be saying that, but I love it.
It's actually the best for you, and it tastes the best. Honestly, people just continue enjoying your food, continue buying dairy products. That's the best thing you can do. Dairy farmers and agriculture in general, we're not any different than everybody else right now. Our biggest concerns are probably the skyrocketing inflation that we're seeing. This year, I'm betting just the feeds that I feed my cows, the cost to do that is probably up 25%.
Wow.
It's bad, and I'm right in the middle of building new buildings. Thankfully, I've locked in all my prices before, because as of right now, if I were to do it, it would be 45% markup from where I locked it in at, and that's just insane. It's an interesting time to be alive, that's for sure. And honestly, it kind of feels a lot like 2008. That's the last time we saw stuff go like this. And then 2009, everything in agriculture crashed to the floor. And so a lot of farmers are thinking, is that what we have to look forward to in 2022? Is all our markets crashing? Because with all the uncertainty this year, it's a scary time. So just continue enjoying good food. Um, don't buy into the labels that, natural this or healthy that. All your food is safe. Just buy according to what you like the best. We have one of the safest, most productive agricultural sectors in the world. It's phenomenal what we've been able to do as far as feeding people. I mean, like you said, every decade it's, oh, we're going to run out of food, and yet every decade we're producing more food with less land and less inputs. We are getting smarter. We understand soil composition at a level that we've never before. So as far as what people can do, just enjoy your food. I don't want you to be scared that what you're eating is destroying the environment. It's not.
So vote with your dollar. Just keep supporting the industry.
Yeah.
And specifically
and
Tillamook.
Find local farms. I mean, that's the best way, except for with Tillamook. Buy Tillamook. Don't find locals for Derrick. But seriously, I mean, go to your local markets. There's ranchers that are starting their own local processing facilities because they want to be able to provide for their local communities. I mean, we send to a local butcher and we butcher our own animals. Just get more involved with where your food comes from so that when there is disruptions in the supply chain, you're not worried about it because you have your local source and you know where your next steak is going to come from or your next dairy products. Just get back involved in agriculture. I mean, people used to know their local farmer and go to the local butcher shop and get their food there. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that as people realize that maybe, the Walmarts and the super centers of the world, maybe that's not the best avenue for supporting local farms and making sure that you have food on your plate.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're right. You do see more in the discourse in general about obviously supporting local. I mean, there's been a big push for that in general, but yeah, I think more than ever now people are disconnected from where, like, for example, I follow a lot of hunters and stuff like that. And, I'll see people who will leave comments like, hey, why don't you just get your meat from the grocery store? Why do you have to be so cruel? And it's like, dude, hunting is probably the most sustainable way to procure your meat. You pick off one animal and you eat off of it for the year, basically. That animal has a swift, immediate death, whereas it could have been ripped apart by a predator and died that way. And it's just like people they don't connect like a hamburger to the animal. Like that disconnect is there in a big way. And I think kind of what you're saying, obviously not everybody can hunt, not everybody can fish, but getting to know your local farmers and stuff, that's a great way for you to be more connected to that and to understand more about where it's coming from.
Yeah, and you'll get a better feel for what is available locally.
Right.
I mean, we've gotten so spoiled. The other day I went to the store and I couldn't find blueberries or strawberries because, supply chain issues. And I was just like, what? There's no blueberries or strawberries?
Yeah.
Well, it's October in Oregon. Our strawberry season here locally is June and July. So I'm spoiled too. And we all are.
Absolutely.
Instant gratification. Man, I want to get some avocados. You don't think about the fact that they're coming from Mexico or Southern California, most likely.
Yeah. Yeah. And people don't, I mean, like we evolved as a species, only being able to eat certain things, certain times of the year. And I think that's a big, part of the reason we have so much illness and obesity and all of this is like, you're completely challenging what you adapted to be. But I guess that's kind of a whole other conversation.
Topic, yeah.
I did want to touch on, and we've talked about this a little bit through like messaging on Instagram and stuff, but you have kind of a unique insight into the supply chain issues, at least a little bit as far as food goes. And you had mentioned that, you know, it's not as like a lot of folks are kind of imagining like food spoiling on container ships that are
Mhm.
anchored off the coast, and it's not really that so much, right?
Yeah, it's really not. I mean, specialty things like, bananas or something like that that's coming from the southern hemisphere. Or during the winter, we could be bringing food in from the southern hemisphere. But most of our food is, I mean, meat is, we import some beef, but it's for hamburger because our ranchers raise what are called fat cattle, which
Mm-hmm.
is it's a higher cut. They make a better profit. It's going into your steaks, your specialty meats, and so they bring in some lesser or thinner, but not as fat of an animal to make it into hamburger. A lot of dairy cattle go into hamburger because you're not going to want to eat a steak from a 8-year-old dairy cow. It's just you're going to chew it forever.
Right.
Whereas it makes perfect hamburger. It's leaner, so you don't have to separate the fat out. But all our food, I mean, our country, the United States, Canada, even Mexico, we produce more than enough food. We actually export food. I mean, I think 1 out of every 7 days worth of milk in the United States is actually exported.
Wow.
So you're not going to run out of dairy products. There is slight issues like plastic milk jugs. That could be an issue. Things like that. You might end up having to find some milk cartons that are made here locally. But no, nobody's going to go hungry in the United States. Things might be on a little shorter supply. So, but you're not going to starve.
Yeah.
It's not
I,
a concern.
I don't want, we don't have to get super political, or we can if you want, but I noticed that I mean, you know me, I don't mind getting political at all, but I noticed that Pete Buttigieg, however you pronounce his last name, the uh, Secretary of Transportation,
Transportation, yeah.
yeah, he said recently that the somehow, and I couldn't wrap my head around this. Maybe you understand where he's coming from, but that what we're experiencing now in terms of supply chain issues and all of these ships, being anchored off the coast, and the whole big fiasco, that it's a sign that Biden's plan is working. I don't know if you saw that, but he
Yeah,
actually
I
said
did. And
that.
I'm as confused by it as you are. I don't.
I don't get it. Yeah, like what is the plan? Like what? I don't understand, man. I really don't.
I think what they're trying to say is because more people are, the economy is opening back up, it means there needs to be more supply. So that's what backed up the ports. But I don't think that doesn't make sense to me.
So he's
So
saying that it's
I don't
essentially
know.
a sign of high demand, and
But
because the economy's
I
opening
don't
back
think
up.
we're even at the demand we were at in 2019 before they shut things down.
Right.
Um, and I would say that honestly, our supply chains within country are much more adaptive now than they were in 2019 or 2020 when we shut down. Like, for example, the dairy industry, I think something like 30 to 40% of all dairy products were going into the food services side. And
Mm-hmm.
then all the restaurants, everything shut down. And all of a sudden, where does that product go? You can't just switch and have it go the other way. So, companies and processors got much more adaptive about being able to switch packaging, switch where it was going. Some laws actually got changed. Like it used to be that if it was food service packaging, it doesn't have the QR codes and all the stuff that you see on packaging for retail. So that couldn't be sold in retail. And then all of a sudden you saw like 4-pound bags of shredded cheese were at retail stores because all of a sudden that was allowed because
Right.
otherwise we're going to have to throw all those bags of cheese away. So our
Oh,
supply chains on the agricultural side are probably better now than they ever have been because they've had to adapt and they've had to figure out how to overcome these obstacles. So that's one good thing that came out of the whole situation is we've gotten much more nimble.
So why has everything kind of come to a grinding halt? Yeah, I mean, I haven't researched everything enough. I mean, I have my ideas, and obviously, I've read headlines and all of this, but I haven't dug into it. I mean, what is your understanding as to why we have the massive crisis that we currently have in the country with supply chain
Your
stuff?
guess is as good as mine. I don't
Okay,
like it's above my pay grade.
right. Yeah, it's insane, man. I just don't get it. I mean, maybe I'm a big dumb meathead, and I should leave it to the experts. But it just seems it's incredibly odd to me, and the spin that's put on it is the weirdest part. Like what I was just
Yeah,
saying.
well, because I know for a fact, like I ordered some calf pens for my new facility, and they were supposed to be here in July, and they were still in a container out on the ocean till 2 weeks ago, and they got unloaded, but we're not sure where they're at since they got unloaded. So, I mean, a lot of this, some of this has been going on since before all of this. I mean, there's been 2019, I believe there was 3 million open truck driving jobs. So some of it
Oh
was
wow.
it's just been compounded because longer waits at the ports to get unloaded and loaded, and then you had truckers waiting longer, which meant they couldn't go and truck other things, or there's been new rules implemented on how long truckers are allowed to go, and with the electronic databases, it's a lot harder to maybe skate the rules like they might have been able to do in the past.
Hmm.
Sorry, my
Oh, you're fine, man. No problem.
yeah,
Um,
he's a
yeah,
dope.
it's been this kind of perfect storm, and I think obviously the pushback we've seen on mandates certainly has to be playing some sort of role. At
Mm-hmm.
longshoremen and people working ports, I imagine to some extent, and then of course truckers. I know, there's been some pushback there. Just about every industry, there's been pushback, and when you combine that with, I think, incentivizing people not to work in general over the last year, which the administration has done. It's a
Well, and
recipe
I
for
think
disaster.
there's the side of it that we don't think of a lot, but there's such a demand for workers right now that employees actually hold the power, which they haven't
Yes,
held in a long time. So you have people that are like, I'm not going to do that job for that pay anymore. You guys, so, and you can't fault them for it with what inflation is doing. I mean,
right.
John Deere right now, their workers went on strike because
I saw
they
that.
want the same benefits that the older employees were getting in their retirement. And I don't know all the details there, but it's good for them. I mean,
Yeah,
I know what a John Deere tractor costs, and so I prefer some of that go to the employees making it.
absolutely. Yeah, it's been interesting, man. Like when I got COVID, I went and got monoclonal antibodies, and I was talking to the nurse that administered the treatment, and she said that because they were so short staffed, they were like, she was this young girl, not long out of nursing school. They
Mhm.
they gave her like a $10,000 sign on bonus, and they were paying her like $100 an hour. And she was like, never did I imagine making this much money, but they desperately needed nurses for this clinic who were vaccinated, and a lot of nurses were refusing to get vaccinated. And so it's just crazy. And you see fast food places offering like $20 an hour, and I mean it's
Mhm.
wild. So I don't know.
Yeah, well, my guy, because we do it's called Click List, where you order online and then you go pick it up, which is great for our area. It's top of the line, rural economy, being able to do that at the local supermarket. But the new guy that puts my groceries in the car for me, he used to work at a what are they, a title company,
Hmm.
and he goes, I came to work here because they offered me $21 an hour, and the title company was like, we can't match that. He goes,
Wow.
I'm done at work by 1 in the afternoon every day. I have my afternoon to myself, and I'm making more money here without having to worry that if I screw up somebody's title on their new mortgage, it could cost a lot of money.
Yeah.
So, and I was like, good for you, man. Good for you. But now it's going to take longer to get your title done at a title company because, so
Yeah, and I
it's a
mean,
double-edged sword for sure.
for sure. And you're going to see these increases in the cost of labor reflected in the cost of goods, as we already have, but it's just going to continue. And it was funny when not funny, but frustrating when the press secretary was like, you know, companies shouldn't raise their prices just because we're raising their taxes. Like, what are you? You've
Oh,
clearly never had a
well,
business.
Oregon, lovely Oregon, just did a gross receipts tax, which
Mm-hmm.
means they tax you on your gross sales instead of your net.
That's ridiculous.
We're still seeing the effects of that. There's things that uh, one of the local Bimart, which is just a local Oregon company, is shutting down their pharmacy because they can't afford it. And one of the things they listed on there was the gross receipts tax, because we're getting taxed on our gross sales from the pharmacy, and that's not how that works.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's crazy, man.
it makes you wonder if the people making these laws understand economics at all.
They don't. I mean, they
They
clearly don't.
can't.
How
They
could
don't.
they? Yeah.
You look at. I'm not a very large dairy, but on paper, I milk sales. I'm a multi-million dollars in milk sales every year, but right off the top, over 50% of that goes straight back into the cow just as feed. It's just like, so, you know,
Yeah. Well,
just,
I owned a chain of restaurants that I sold at the end of 2018. I mean, our margins were razor thin in that
mhm.
industry. And I cannot imagine owning those
Yeah, you
businesses
sold
right
at the
now.
right time.
Like, oh my gosh, that we got so lucky, man. But I mean, maybe like at the end of the year, 15 to 18% margin. And in these days, I mean, I'd be writing checks, to keep the business open.
Yeah, well, it's like that new thing they want to do with $600 in your account. They want to be able to monitor it in case, well, if somebody said they only made $10,000, but they had $3 million worth of in and out of that account. And
Dude, give
in
me a
the
break.
agricultural community, there's a meme going around where we're all just like, look the other way, because it doesn't take much in the ag community to have that kind of money going in and out of an account
Right.
and
Yeah.
only make 10 to 15,000 when you're all said and done for the year. And it's just like, it's really not that hard to have an account that looks like that. But I guess we're all going to get audited now.
Yeah. I think that I think this is my hypothesis on it. I think that it's an effort at more visibility of people making money in the gig economy, because they want to be privy to these transactions. People getting paid through Venmo, getting paid through Cash App, and all this. Because I think a lot of that was going unnoticed by the IRS,
Oh,
and
I agree.
all it's going to do is squeeze the middle to lower middle class even more. You know,
Yeah,
it's
it's
insane.
exactly right. Or even if you're being paid under the table, or
Right.
the cash economy, which is going to come back more and more as inflation hits and all that, So, yeah, they're trying to make sure that people aren't making money that and not telling the government about it. And yet they're trying to say that, oh, it's to keep track of the billionaires and millionaires. No, it's to keep track of somebody that maybe made an extra $5,000 selling T-shirts.
Right. Exactly.
But you want to make sure you're getting that cut on that $5,000.
Anyone
It's
who
not.
believes that monitoring transaction of $600 or more is an effort at getting at the millionaires and billionaires is
Yeah,
give me a break.
it's a bit of a clown world to even think
A
people
bit,
do
man, the
that.
whole thing. Which I know you've got kind of a hard stop, and we got to do another one because there's so many things I want to talk to you about. And as you can tell, I'm all over the place with the different
Yeah, well,
things.
yeah, me too. And
So
and with what I do online, I try not to talk about any of this other stuff unless it directly involves agriculture. And there's
right.
plenty of government issues that agriculture deals with. Uh, so I think that's enough for what I do online. But Yeah, my wife would kill me if I decided to do a political thing online too.
Well, that's a big part of the reason why. I mean, you probably noticed I don't show my wife much on my social media, and that's because I she has a corporate job with a large company. That's one big thing. But another thing is like I don't want her being a target for crazy people, and
Yeah,
it's just it's something you got to really consider. And as my daughter gets older, I'll probably show her less. You know,
yeah, and that we're of the same opinion. My wife is a very personal person, private. She's laughing at me right now. And we agree, we're of the same opinion that as the girls get a little older, they're going to fade out of my social content. I mean, we had to put security cameras around the house, and
hmm
we're building these new facilities, and then 5 years from now, I'm planning on building a visitor center because we are on a major highway, an hour away from Portland, which is going to attract a lot of people, especially considering the Tillamook Visitor Center is the #1 tourist attraction in the Pacific Northwest, with several million people visiting every year. And one of her stipulations for me being able to do that was I don't want to live 150 yards from where thousands of people are coming every day.
yeah,
And it's like, okay, so 5 years from now, I have a piece of property that we're building on, and so that we can have our privacy because we've already had people come to the house.
hmm
Thankfully, they were people that like what I do online and just wanted to, say hi. And it's still a huge invasion of privacy.
sure.
And
And you have the issue of being. I mean, you're. It's kind of hard for you to hide when you have a large farm. Like, for
yeah,
me, it's like people don't know where I live, and that's a great
right.
thing. They might know where my studio is and where the gym is and all that stuff, but like they can't find my house for the most part,
Mm-hmm.
unless they really want to do some detective work. But I can certainly understand your wife's perspective on like, look, I don't want to be, living right here where all this is happening.
Yeah, yeah, I didn't even argue with her. I said, okay, that is more than fair. And so, and we're going to build the house that we want instead. Because right now we live in a 110-year-old house that we're still renovating. I mean, we've been renovating for as long as we've been here, 10
I know how
years,
that goes. Yeah.
piece by piece. And
So
happy to just have a state of the art house,
yeah, 100%,
outlets
man.
in every room.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. So what? I mean, where do you think things go from here in terms of our country? Oh, hi,
This is a little Dylan. She is 10 months old.
10 months
Yeah,
old. For
I mean,
those just listening and not watching video, we have a very cute kiddo with us now. So
yeah. I got a text from Casey, my wife, probably a month or so ago saying, I thought that our house was pretty childproof from when we had Reagan. Then I met Hill. She is just into everything and just,
yeah,
yeah,
we got super
she's
lucky
adorable.
with ours. She was super easy. She's been easy like every step of the way, and I'm like, the next one I can already tell it's gonna be we're gonna get
Well,
tested.
Dylan's easy. Don't get me wrong. She just go, go, go. And so was
Yeah.
Reagan. Reagan was bucking at 9 months old.
Oh wow, that's really
Yeah.
early. Holy crap.
Yeah, and I don't make small kids either. I'm 6'4", 300 pounds. And I mean, Dylan is 10 months old and wearing 2T clothes.
Wow.
I'm
Crap.
My girls are going to be basketball players, go to college. I'm not going to have to worry about funding their college. That's the goal.
There you go. Well, who knows what the state of college will be by then anyway. That's a whole
Yeah,
nother
that's true.
conversation. All of our institutions are in a state of flux right now, man. It's pretty wild. Um,
It's really wild. It's a fun time to be alive. I mean,
you know,
there is no uh, mind blank. There's always something interesting to watch going on,
mhm,
and
yeah.
scratch your head and go, that doesn't even make sense.
Well, for everything that is happening, I try my best to be as optimistic as possible, and I mean, it truly is like the best time to be alive in just
It
about
really
every metric.
is.
You know, so
I mean, a conversation from
Right.
across country, and we're able to see each other. I mean, that's the kind of stuff when I grew up was sci-fi kind of stuff. I mean, where are we going to be in 10 years? It's exciting time to be alive.
Exactly. Dude, you have all of the knowledge in the world in the palm of your hand with your smartphone. I mean, it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't get any better than
And
that.
nobody uses
Right. Yeah, and we're dumber because of it. Well, it's because we've
I suppose it
outsourced our
does.
brain power to a device.
Yeah.
That's
Those
what
have
I
gotten
think.
smart and the people have gotten dumber.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
think that's what my
absolutely.
dad said.
Well, yeah, I believe it. I agree. What do you think this is what I was getting at earlier. Like where do you think everything goes from here? I mean, there's so many unknowns. Like what do you think the next year or two looks like for America?
For dairy, well, I think there's a lot of new technologies that are coming online, and there is this net zero initiative that they're pushing down in dairy
Right.
to carbon neutral by 2030. So there's going to be a big push to hopefully put digesters on farms, do things that actually make sense. Not, I mean, you see articles like if you feed seaweed to cattle, you can cut their methane emissions. Well, okay, well, let's be realistic. We're not going to ship seaweed from the coast to
Right.
the middle of the country. That doesn't make sense. So there's just so much technology. I think dairy has a bright future. I just think that we have some headwinds that we're going to be dealing with, and one of them is the fake dairy propaganda, because the easiest way to sell that stuff is to demonize the real thing. And so luckily there's a lot of us that are showing what dairy farming is, being proactive and pushing back. Otherwise, I don't think we'd be in the spot we are where we have a brighter future.
Right.
It's a good time. I mean, and there's smaller dairies that are doing some awesome things. I know 4 or 5 in Oregon alone that are bottling their own milk, supplying direct to consumers again. Whereas before it was everybody was doing like Tacoma, where you join a co-op and the co-op deals with and sells your product. There's a lot of entrepreneurs in the dairy industry now, and I view myself as one. I mean, I'm going to build a visitor center and help teach about dairy. So, and agriculture in general. I mean, we are part of the solution, not part of the problem.
Yeah.
Would open their eyes. So, and we feed people in an industry that feeds you is probably worth defending and fighting for. See, there you go. I just butchered my own line again.
Hey, at least I'm not the only one who did it.
Yeah, I mean, we changed it at the very end to an industry worth fighting for because it just sounds better. I'd rather be fighting for it than defending.
Yeah, good point.
Because I feel like I'd rather be moving forward, not on my heels,
Yep.
deflecting blows. And that's what the book is about: is going on the offensive.
Yeah, no, I think it was a great change, and like going into this, I was like, "Don't screw it up! Don't screw it up." He changed it from when you read the advanced copy, but all right. So that's the dairy industry. What do you think it's going to look like for our country?
If you step outside, you actually go out and talk to your neighbors, or you go out and go to functions. A lot of the issues that they seem to feel like are major on social media or in the media just aren't there.
Yeah.
I mean, most people don't care. They're just out enjoying their life and spending time with friends and family. And that leads me to believe that our country is still moving in the right direction despite all of the BS you see going on. And I think that they're going to be very surprised with what happens in the next few years.
I hope you're right, and I tend to have that same perspective. You know, I think as parents we kind of have to. I mean, at the same time, you're prepared to fight for whatever you have to, but I mean, it is if you just take a break from all this madness online. I mean, things are pretty dang good out there, except for
Really good.
supply chain issues, inflation, all that stuff. But
Yeah, minor details
there's a
like that.
simple fix to
You're
that.
absolutely right. And being a dad of a little girls, yeah, there's some topics that I'm not going to touch on, but there is definitely my girls will never have to worry about their dad not being there to take care of them if something. My wife's laughing at me. It's just a brave new world, and they will do well in it.
Yeah, likewise. I agree. I know, and I know what you're getting at. And as a father to a daughter, I share the same perspective. And I think in
It
general,
really changes your perspective on life having
oh yeah,
daughters. I mean, it's just 1,000% different. I mean, than I was before.
yeah,
They're like, those are my little girls. I know how to make people disappear. I shouldn't say
exactly,
that,
exactly.
but it's the truth.
Well, it is true, and it's an instinct that you can't avoid, and it's crazy to me how. Yeah, and this is a conversation maybe for another time too, but like even saying something like that these days, people will be like, "Oh, you shouldn't, whatever." It's like gender role, this and that, and blah blah blah, being protective of your daughter, and I'm like, no, it's normal for a father to be protective of their daughter, and the day she brings a boyfriend home, you better believe he's going to be up
I already
against it.
have a few of the boys in her class, Reagan's classes, that I'm like,
Yep,
paying attention to you.
got my eye
You
on that
know,
one.
it's and anybody that wants to tell me that I shouldn't be like that, well, you know what? You do you, because
Exactly.
my daughters will never have to worry about a father that doesn't have their backs.
Amen. Absolutely, man. Well, I know you said you had about an hour. I think we just hit an hour. So we can go ahead and wrap this thing, but we absolutely have to jump on again. And maybe when you
Yeah,
have a little more
absolutely.
time, I'd love to. I mean, there's so many topics we could discuss. I wanted to get you on at least for this hour so we can highlight the book and tell people to go buy it, go buy his book, everybody. And in closing, if you could give one bit of advice to folks today, I used to ask if you could give advice to young men, today, what would you give? But in general, if you young people or just people, what would you say?
If I could give one piece of advice to people in general, it would be um, to stop buying into every narrative or every fear-based article that they put online. They're just trying for clicks, and you gotta dig a little deeper.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. And that's the whole premise of this podcast. Free mind, open your mind up, do your research,
Mm-hmm.
study these things. Don't be reactionary. So that's great advice, man. Derrick, where can folks find you online?
I am at TDF Honest Farming. It's short for Tillamook Dairy Farmer. On Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and at Derrick Josi on Twitter. I am also tdfhonestfarming.com.
All right. And go to Amazon to find his book, An Industry Worth Fighting For.
That's right.
All right, my friend, we got to do it again. It flew by. I feel like there's a million things we could talk about, but I appreciate your time.
Forever. Eventually, you'll have to come out this way when I have the new
Absolutely.
facility.
I want to come out there, and I mean, Oregon's beautiful. I lived in Northern California for grad school, so like I love that coast. I definitely need to get out there again, man. But all right, I appreciate your time. I know you're a busy man, so I will let you go, and I look forward to chatting again in the future.
All right.
Bye, brother.
See you later.